So I'm excited for these questions. You can go ahead again, submit your questions via the chat screen, and then I'll do my very best to answer your questions.
Yeah, Judy, I did have one. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Louise.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Can you say a little bit about moment of truth again? Because I captured a few things, but I wanted to just get that more, or hero moment, as you called it, Susan. When an experience becomes representative of the brand, and I think there was a little more to it than.
Right. So when you have a service, so a service moment was when you have those documented, and you can see from the beginning from the customer touch point, the customer actions, all the way to the back office and the supporting systems behind that. There are a collection of moments, right? A collection of building blocks, and a service moment is when that all comes together. Now, a key service moment is when, or a moment of truth, is when that particular interaction is going to make or break your brand. So it's going to be memorable, either plus or minus, right? And that's going to be their takeaway. So think about an amusement park, right? So you're going there for the rides because that's really exciting. But if on a hot summer day, you get stranded in the parking lot, or it's a really long walk to the first ride, or they're paying the cost for a soda is $5, those start to build up and create this, it undermines your experience. So yes, you might have really, really enjoyed that ride, but if all of these other things are degrading your service, so a lot of that stuff should disappear, right? So you shouldn't think about the parking lot, you shouldn't think about the walk, all of those things should kind of fall into the background. They want to be background, but if something drastically goes wrong with that, then that becomes a memorable point, and that can negatively impact your brand.
Yes. Okay, cool. And I'm kind of curious if that, because those, I assume those are moments within, your plan service, where I'm thinking about our HEB example and two things that happened during these different storms. That there was a grocery store, and I actually do not know the name, where they had to get rid of a whole lot of food, and they put a guard on the trash can and wouldn't let, they were turning people away. Where HEB lost power in this one place, people were shopping, and we've all heard that story, right? And they said, after a certain amount of time, they went, okay, everybody come to the front, take your food home. Just take it. We can't check you out, but you can have your food. And I think those are very memorable moments, but I don't know if they would be part of this service or just part of the experience, right?
So when you map out that experience, those would be the exception phases, the exception things that you need to step through. And I know that HEB really has done a lot of extra work over the years because of their hurricane readiness plans. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they were able to pivot those for the pandemic, and then again now 2 weeks ago with the ice storm. So they have been doing a lot of scenario playing, and so making sure that you consider, because that's the other key point, and thank you for bringing that up, Louise, is a lot of times we go through the happy path, and the happy path is fine, but again, making that service moment is when it's not happy, and what are you going to do about it when things go bad? Okay, what's your reaction? How are you going to handle?
I have to.
All right. So.
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
I'll stop.
I was going to look at some of these other questions. So any resources for learning more about service design? So there is my friend Jamin Hageman, he actually has a website, and I believe it's called Service Design Tools. And there's also a service design group, and I will get those to Susan to send out. I don't have those references handy, but just look up service design tools, and he's probably going to be the first 2 or 3 websites that come up. And I don't know how to pronounce your name, Gism. The Nielsen Norman Group also has a lot of articles and examples. So there's a couple of other resources, and then IDEO.org also has some tools to use. Yeah, service design tools. Oh, you did find it. Good. Service design tools. Yeah, that's really great.
Cool. So one of my questions.
Thank you, everybody. I see a lot of my friends on here, so that's I'm very happy to see some friends as we go through here.
If you guys need to go, don't hesitate. But I do have another question, and it's one that we wrestle with on our projects. It's how do you choose the level of focus? Do you try to map something as big as customer experience at HEB, or do you pick a smaller slice to tackle?
Well, and I would say to that, it's good to try and go soup to nuts through entire service to document. And then once you have it documented, so what I zoomed in on was the recovery when there was an error, right? And so then you can look at like all the components that make up that recovery process and see what needs to be adjusted, right? And I think McD had a question. McD, what was your question?
Yeah, sorry. I was just talking to myself. My question was about when you're trying, sort of along the same lines of Susan's questions. How do you figure out when doing the process flow, you're making sure you're including everybody? And I know the obvious is, hey, if you touch this product, I'm talking more from like the political angle. Specifically, I remember being a consultant in a company, and they were talking about doing a new shipping thing. And my immediate thought was process flow. Let's see who hits what and what touches what. And when you change it here, what does it mean down the road? And he looked at me like I said the most, angriest thing in the world, took me aside after the meeting and said, how dare you? I'm like, sorry, what? How dare I try to get your organization to work together? So my question is more from that side of the thing. How do you handle, you as an outsider saying, you really need to include all your people, rather than them saying, no, I'll speak for them, or you know what I mean?
Right. Well, communication. And, sometimes it's difficult, especially when you don't always know everyone who's involved or who you might be accidentally excluding, right? So you have to work really hard with your partners to make sure that when you go in and you're talking to, focused on a particular experience, who all is involved. And sometimes it's, meetings before the meeting. There's some communication, trying to make sure that everyone's aware. And then having a participant, looking at the level of Zoom, and maybe just having one participant from this, adjacent group, especially if it's a downstream group, that might need to participate. Because one of the other joys about that is if you have, so like when we did the workshop for security, we had a lot of technical designers in there, and we had, we kind of threw the net pretty wide. And what's really important is to have them bring the art of the possible with them, because you don't have that unless you cast that net, right? And I'm not a technical, I don't know how they were layering up these different devices and what the back end connections, the machine connections were, but they did. And so bringing them, up towards this activity up front really helps bring the art of the possible to the conversation, and then you get those innovation opportunities. I think Darling had a question. Darling?
Yeah, it's more of a comment to when I have interacted, I'm a consultant in training, when I have interacted with upper management, there are some personality types that get embarrassed, or they have power control issues. So what I've learned is to hear what, to do some homework, and I don't know if you have or not, in terms of who this person is, who are the heads, who are the top management, or the people that are doing the decision making, and then listen to what they're saying, and then take something from what they're saying and incorporate that into what you're wanting to share, and say, so-and-so has a good point, and in order to expand this wonderful concept or idea of so-and-so, what I would like to suggest is this, and that. So it's pretty much making it sound like it's the idea of the person, such as the gentleman that was offended by your logic and you're wanting to include everyone, is to make that person have it be their idea. I don't know if it's making sense. I haven't eaten yet, so.
That is a very great point. And to be honest, when we first started working with this group, it seemed a little adversarial. And once we demonstrated what we were there to do, because nobody likes, I'm from design, I'm here to help, like nobody wants that. And so what we had to demonstrate to them was, we're on the same side. We all want a secure organization. We want to protect the data. And so we're all on the same team here. We're just a different way of looking at what you're building, is a little bit more insight to how to execute to that. And so that, like I said, nobody wanted to be the hole in the boat. So everybody really wanted to do this and do it well. And so, just making sure that you reiterate that and, have that be your lead into those conversations.
Tom typed a question into chat. I don't know if he's unable to come off mute, or did he leave? But
okay, it says, in how many instances have you seen totally new services added that the team did not realize was missing? This is a really good question. And there was an experience I was working on a couple of years ago when we were working on the service desk. So when you had a technical problem, you called in and got some answers. And when I first started working on it, they're like, Judy, when are you going to get the website done? I'm like, you know what? The website's the least of your problems. Like that is, that's one point, that's an entry point, but that's not the bottom line. And so what came of that was there was a huge friction point, because the member service reps would call into the help desk and then they would not get the service they needed. And how the help desk agents were treating them, they would have gotten fired for if they had treated members that way, right? So there was a little disconnect on how that played out. And so one of the things that we did was some customer service training for the technical help desk agents that they had never had before. So that was not something that was on the list of things to do. It was not a bright, shining object. It was a back-end training issue. And so that was an aspect of the service that had not been on the plan. And so helping those agents create empathy or understand what those folks on the phone were going through, because what they're ultimately doing is trying to do the business of the company, right? So that might be one example that we discovered.
Yeah. Hey, Judy, how are you?
Good. How are you, Tom?
I'm good. Yeah. So, and that was a great answer. And the context for my question is I'm actually working with someone here in Paris on a travel app. And we were kind of defining what the attributes of that app would be. And it came up very quickly. There's a lot of services that people expect now coming out of the pandemic for travel, and also in general. I think there's a lot of service flows that exist today in every realm. Like, the example of the grocery store. that coming out of the pandemic, when everything's normal again, I think people's expectations are going to change. So I think new services as part of the existing service will have to be added. It'll be interesting.
Right. Yes, and this is a really good opportunity for innovation, where you look at different industries and how they solve the problem and see how that can be applied to whatever you're building. So look for analogies for how other people, we call that analogous inspiration, right? Where you go look and see how someone else did it. And then you're like, oh, okay, I can apply some semblance of that to what I'm working on.
One of the things that comes up often in the analogous inspiration section of our strategy and design sprints is the pizza tracker concept that I think Domino's does really well. And it's really useful to look at that because it raises everybody's expectation of any time sensitive process. They internalize the idea that it's my right to know how long that is going to be. It's my right to know where the Uber driver is. How is he around the corner or is he on the other block? You know, is my pizza in the oven or is it, you know, in the car, right? So those expectations get raised and applied, because consumers and employees apply those expectations across the board. We all do it. So I love that tactic.
Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot. Those are great insights. Thank you.
Hey, Susan, why didn't you introduce that pizza tracker to the purchasing team? I think we need it.
Right?
Yep. That's a good idea. Does that feel,
right.
does that feel like a good stopping point?
Yeah, I think so. I think your cat is hungry.
Yeah, he's noisy for sure. Guys, thank you so much for coming. Don't forget that we are having another session every first Friday. The upcoming one is going to be writing in plain language. It has to do with accessibility, but not for the blind and deaf, but for everybody. And it's surprisingly hard to write shorter and more plain language. And I've got a really great expert coming to talk to us on April 2nd. If you have ideas for other sessions that we can do in the UX, digital design and marketing space, we've got between us a big network of really smart people, and I can invite speakers on a topic of your choice. So thank you all for coming, and we will see you next month. Thank you so much, Judy.
Thank you so much.
Really enjoyed this.
You bet.
Great. Thank
you,
Judy.
for having me. I really appreciate it.